1. Hello, Champagners, and welcome back to the Champagne Rugby podcast. On this week's episode of the Champagne Rugby podcast, we are joined by two-time European champion and former Springbok Raymond Rhule. Raymond, how are you doing?
I'm all right, man. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. It's a nice sunny day here in England, and you're currently based in La Rochelle, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
No, based in I think it's the southwest of France in La Rochelle. Look, the weather is amazing for now. Pretty hot. I mean, I saw the boys train today, and when they got off the pitch, essentially it looked like they just had a shower. So we're enjoying the summer for now. Obviously, winter's coming, or winter's around the corner. So we'll just enjoy the last bits of summer. Yeah.
You guys have just come off the back of a massive campaign with the win against Leinster in the European Rugby Championship final. How's the summer been?
Summer's been great, especially for a lot of the boys. Obviously, some boys winning for the first time, some boys winning for the second time. For me, it was a bit of an indifferent summer because I had a scope on my knee, so I couldn't walk for a little bit. You know, it's can't sit in certain positions, just moving around. But I mean, it was a summer spent with family, so that part's always great. But following the boys on social media, a lot of them were having fun all over the place. And look, I mean, it's nice to get away from the game for a little bit, just to refocus.
And did you get some time to kind of relax and take your head off the game?
Yeah, no, for sure. Look, you don't have to ask me twice when you tell me to go relax. So I know how to do that. Yes, I do have work on the side, but ultimately, I'm able to basically get away from the game, and I think it's needed.
Yeah, it's good to have a break every now and then. So on the Champagne Rugby podcast, it's all about high level rugby players and how they've got to where they've got to
Yeah.
and what made them. So walk me through Raymond Rhule. What's been the making of, or the challenges and the journey that you've been to be where you are today?
Well, it depends. I mean, I think with professional sport, there's always an element of luck. You know, yes, you get opportunities, but you need the right opportunity at the right time. And if you got the right opportunity at the right time, and you're able to use it, you know, you can catapult yourself very far. I think that I've been a product of that. Throughout my career in being given an opportunity. And I think once given an opportunity, I tend to never look back. Not to say that one doesn't make any mistakes, but I think if I look back on my career thus far, it's just been a combination of having opportunities and taking them or grabbing them with both hands. Yeah.
What were some of those opportunities like in sort of your early life that kind of projected you into taking on professional rugby?
I mean, initially, I never really played rugby. I was more of a sports, a soccer guy, coming from Ghana, which is our number one sport in the country. But as I grew up in Bloemfontein, a lot of the young boys there played rugby, and I used to wonder what oddball shape is this, you know, and you see them kicking it around, and picked it up. And I mean, I went home telling my mom, look, I play this sport. And the first thing she's like, no, hell no, you're not going to do that. Because, I mean, they're all associated with American football and how rough it is. But got given a scholarship there. From then on, I moved to Libueta, where I was fortunate enough to be coached by really good coaches that are highly, how do I say it? They were invested in a lot of us young boys, and they've managed to produce quite a few Springboks from that crop of boys. And outside of that, just looking towards my professional rugby, where I was playing at the varsity team, and by then they'd already made or announced the under-20 squad, and I kept on telling the eight or my SNCs that, look, I'm going to play for that under-20 squad later in the year. And they're like, you haven't made any SA teams. What are you talking about? You know? And luckily enough, I got an opportunity back then. It was Vodacom Cup, where it's more of a mixture of the guys that aren't playing Super Rugby and the young boys come together and keep them busy before the Currie Cup started. So I played in that. There was a few scouts that were there in the only game that I played, and they saw something in me, ended up inviting me to the already chosen or formed under 20 squad, just to see what I've got. And a few things went my way, got the right opportunities, and I ended up starting the first under 20s game. Now that in and of itself didn't go all that well, and that's where you learn the lesson: first in or last in, first out. So I got dropped after the first game, ended up playing the semi-finals, took my opportunity there, played the finals. From there on, I got chosen out for the Cheetah Senior Currie Cup side. I took my opportunities there. And at the end of that year, from being nowhere on the radar to being on tour with the Springboks, and your heroes are singing happy birthday to you. So look, it's that's why I say, like, my career has been well, not plagued, but just consists of a lot of opportunities that I've taken. And I have a tendency of thinking I can do any and everything, when sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes you find yourself sitting on your ass, but you take the good with the bad.
How old were you when you moved to South Africa?
I was 7 years old. I was 99, 7 years old.
And how was it growing up in South Africa?
It was different. I mean, at that stage, I didn't know how to speak the local language. I was a young foreign boys, and back then it was acceptance wasn't that easy, you know. Right now, I think with a whole lot more foreigners being in and around South Africa, it's more acceptable. Back then, there was one or two foreign boys, and you sort of essentially have to adapt or die. You got to figure out how it works or how everything goes along, and if not, you become an outcast. So taught me a lot.
And then from South Africa, with the club team, you were with Cheetahs, and then you got picked up by the Boks kind of in 2012, I believe. You mentioned you went on the tour. How was that first experience for you?
No, it was amazing. Looking back, or as soon as the older you grow, you look back at that experience, and I was just happy to be there. A lot of the guys by that age or by that stage, rugby for them was a really serious thing, you know. I was training with guys that have got mortgages and and wife and kids, and I'm sitting there fresh out of high school. I'm just happy to be there enjoying rugby. And also at that stage, you'd only see rugby as a good time, you know. So looking back at that, I think I didn't really take it as serious as I was supposed to. But that's just part of growing up. And I think the nice thing about the youngsters that are coming through now, they know what's expected of them, and I think they carry it very well.
Which players did you sort of look up to when you were growing up?
Honestly, JP Peterson and Brian Abana. I think those two guys were great players, and to a certain degree, Jacques Fourie being the 13 for South Africa at that stage, you know. There's quite a few guys. But yeah, I think if I was to pick two, it would be JP and Brian.
Did you interact with them? What was your kind of sort of first impressions and relationship with them when you were a youngster going in?
No, it was good. I mean, for me to manage, or when I managed to make the South African squad, I was actually replacing Brian because he got hurt, I think, in the Currie Cup final, his hammy. So I didn't spend that much time with him. But when we were on tour, I think in England, he came on or came to the team hotel and just to be with the boys. And with JP, we just got on like a house on fire. We're both guys that enjoy cracking a joke and don't take a lot seriously and just enjoy being ourselves, you know. So we got on very well. So it was amazing. It was amazing.
And then you made your debuts during this tour, or did you make your debut slightly later?
No, I had to wait 5 years to make my debut. I kept my Springbok blazer. I couldn't wear it for 5 years. I only ended up making my debut in June, I think, of 2017.
And that would have been against one of the maybe.
We played 3 tests against France.
Yeah.
First one I think was in Pretoria, then Durban, then Joburg.
Oh, fair enough. So at least you're doing a bit of a tour around your kind of childhood hometowns and everything
Yeah,
from Africa. And
yeah.
how did playing for the Boks differ from sort of club rugby? Was it quite a step up, or how was it for you?
No, definitely. I think look, there's a whole lot less margin for error. The Boks, depending on which area you play, they play a different type of rugby, and Test rugby is generally a whole lot less. How do I say it? Free spirited and a whole lot more responsibility. And I mean, you performing in club rugby doesn't necessarily translate to international rugby. You know, you've got to earn your stripes in that aspect as well. Because, I mean, you might find weak spots in certain teams in a club aspect, but once you go to an international aspect, I mean, you're playing with the best of the best. So it differs in that aspect. But all in all, I think it's a step up. It's a step up.
And can you share some of your most memorable moments while wearing a Springbok jersey?
I think that would be getting on the field the first time and actually being able to call myself a fully fledged Springbok. Because, I mean, getting my Springbok number back in 2012 and basically keeping my jacket in my closet for another 5 years, you know, the thoughts started to creep in. Will you ever be good enough? Will you ever actually achieve that dream, you know? And just being able to take that off coming onto the field or starting in that first game in Pretoria was pretty special. And I think the second part would definitely be scoring my first try against Argentina in PE. That was also pretty special. So yeah, I think those are the 2 moments for me.
And then on your debut, was there any sort of traditions or post-match traditions that the players or new debutants have to go through once they've pulled on the Springbok jersey?
No, I think all teams have their own the initiations, but they try to keep that away till the end of the tour, especially because now you want the boys to be able to focus and get everything out the way, you know, get the business end of everything out. And then, yes, we obviously have our own traditions, depending on which team it is, that you do go through now once you become a fully fledged member of the Springboks.
And I think with being a Springbok, the fans are very, let's say, passionate about the national team. And I think there's quite a lot of pressure and expectations that comes with being a Springbok. How did you cope with kind of the spotlight and, let's say, the weight of representing the country at this level?
Let's just say it teaches you a lot, because coming from a team like the Cheetahs, yes, we always had aspirations, but our fans were more gentle and kind in terms of how things were handled. Expectations weren't always as high. We just always they enjoyed the rugby we played, and obviously winning is always a part of that. But they understood sometimes if we didn't obviously reach certain milestones. But with the Springboks, I think at that stage, when the fans come down hard on you, it's hard to, or it's easy to get lost in that whole thing. But when you look at it from a point of hindsight, or you look at it from an external point of view, then you realize that, look, for the fans to go that hard, it just means that they really care. You know, they really are proud of that jersey. It means a lot to them. And I think that's something that tends to get lost in translation, or people tend to understand that. Yes, it doesn't always come out positive, but I think the core ingredient in there is just they've got a certain passion, and it's one thing that South Africans are very known for, is their passion. So I think, yes, whilst I was going through that, it was a lot, but looking back at it, it's just a realization that they're very proud of the jersey, and granted, they should be. So when the jersey does well, you're a hero, and when it doesn't, I mean,
Yeah.
nothing left to be said.
I remember there was quite a lot of kind of backlash after the sort of All Blacks defeat during the Alistair Coetzee sort of reign there, and
Yeah.
I remember you got a bit of backlash during that period. How did you kind of deal and overcome the adversity? And did you get much sort of hate online or anything like that?
No, I was going to say a bit of backlash is a huge understatement. I think that that test is essentially known as the Raymond Rhule test. I'm sure they've renamed it by now, but a bit of backlash. You can't even compare. I mean, if I remember correctly, I had to switch my phone off. That's how bad it was. So I was getting phone calls, texts when I switched my phone off. Some guys sent emails. I'm like, where would you get my email address from? But it was a difficult time, I will say, mentally, more so than physically. Getting over it, though, took quite a while. Because, I mean, you get where athletes will sit down and just say, you've got to have be strong mentally and not basically keep out all the hate and all that. It's not that easy. Like you've got friends, you've got families, you've got people that are close to you. Even if you don't look at it, they see it. And somewhere, somehow, unless obviously you've addressed certain situations like that, they will tell you what's happening, or you'll hear what's happening. And guys that are mentally strong and are able to basically figure that portion out, I mean, that's a superpower. But I think a lot of athletes or a lot of players do get to that point where it does affect you. And I mean, you see it out on performances. For a simple example is if a guy's struggling with his kicking, that's the only thing he's worried about, you know? He forgets the rest of his accomplishments or rest of his duties and just worried about the one kick he missed, even though he slotted 10. So it's a tough situation to be in, but I managed to get out of it, so I'm proud of that part.
How long did it kind of go on for? How long did you was it kind of troubling you?
I mean, they just say it was a ratio of 80 minutes to 3 years. So it took me 80 minutes to put myself in it and 3 years for me to get myself out of it.
Is that because sort of the fans were just not letting it go for sort of the 3 years afterwards, or
no? The fans will never let it go in that aspect. That's why I say you can sort of name that that test the Raymond Rhule test. But not even that. I think your biggest enemy is what's going on in here. And when there's a bit of doubt, especially with the sport that we play in at a high level, you don't have any room for doubt. And once that doubt starts to creep in, you know, it starts eating at your psyche. And now it comes down to, even when people aren't talking about you, you feel like they are. So you become your biggest critique, you know, in that aspect. So even when I left, because I'd honestly had to leave South Africa just to be able to basically get away from everything for a little bit. But even when I'd left, coming to France, new environment, new people, no one knows about the whole issue. I still carried all that baggage. So I think for the better amount of 3 years, I was in that rut. Yeah.
So what was kind of the turning point? How did you then get over it?
Honestly speaking, when I first got here to La Rochelle and Rog giving me the 13 jersey, because I mean, number 13 is one of the toughest positions to defend on the field, and that's here where I played it in school and a bit of under 21 rugby. But I've always been known for being a very good defender, you know, and all of a sudden when they now tag you as this horrible defender, that sort of gets creeps into your head. But I came here to La Rochelle with a clean slate, put my best foot forward, and we had an issue at 13, and Roger was like, look, I mean, I'm going to give you this opportunity, and whatever you make of it is is your own. But I think just having that faith in me, where I'd almost like sort of lost faith in that aspect, really gave me a huge boost of confidence and just put me back on the right track. So yeah, I'd say that being looked at from a different light.
Yeah, I think behind the scenes, the player-coach relationship can be a mix of mentorship and camaraderie. Was there any particular conversations or exchanges with Rog that left a lasting impression on you and maybe contributed to your growth as both a player and individual?
No, I wouldn't say there is. I think to put it all together is that actions speak louder than words. A coach can say a lot of things and promise you a lot of things, but every day or every game when a coach picks a starting 15 or 23, he's putting his job on the line. And essentially those guys that he's trusting with or giving those jerseys have a huge responsibility towards him, and he puts a lot of faith in them. So when he gives you that jersey and gives you that opportunity, it says a lot. Even though he doesn't need to say a lot, it says a lot in and of itself. So I think that's for me. We have a lot of conversation, but I don't think there's anything that's more powerful than your act.
Yeah, and you came in, I think Rog took over around 2020, right, or 2019 with La Rochelle, and that's kind of when you came in, right? How was that sort of first few months moving in with the team?
I initially came in 2019, but at that stage, Raj was assistant coach. We initially was Jono. I think Jono was our head coach, and Ronan was our assistant coach. So I came in and look at that stage the year before I was playing Pro D2, and I was doing my thing in there. I was playing fullback, a bit of wing fullback, and I came in with nothing to lose, and from the word go, the guys just saw that, look, we've got something in him, and they encouraged me to be myself and just enjoy the experience. So from the word go, they just allowed me to be me, and that's when you get the best out of me, when I can just be myself.
Exactly. Was it difficult? How was it transitioning over to sort of French culture and French way of life?
It was hard, but I think the nice thing that happens is a lot of the foreign boys, wherever you go, there's guys that's already been in that position, and they can give you sort of a couple of pointers. And I'd like to say thank you to a guy like Burton Francis, who's now back home in South Africa. When I initially got to Grenoble, he just sat me down and said, look, man, the first thing you should know is that you're not going to change anything. And if you're going to rack your brain around trying to change it, you're just going to give yourself more stress. Certain things are just the way they are. And the sooner you accept it, the better it goes. And I took that to heart. And I think it was sound advice.
And how did you kind of change your style of play when you moved to France?
I think it had to change. If I can speak back to the way things happen in Super Rugby, while Super Rugby was still a thing with South African teams, was no matter what happens during the season, you always have another chance next year. So you play under a different amount of pressure. In the French league, there's promotion relegation, and I was at a small team at that stage, Grenoble, which is now in the Pro D2, they're doing very well. But you play there, and every game you're an underdog, and every mistake you make gives us a point, it takes away a point, or we get a bonus point. So every game and every aspect of the rugby environment in France is pressurized, because that could be the mistake that costs you a season or costs you going up, going down. So you play under a different amount of pressure. And now that being said, I would say when I was in Super Rugby, I was a bit more free with the ball, more allowed to make mistakes, and it's not really that bad. I mean, we'll try again next year if it doesn't go our way. Whilst in France, I mean, if you're making mistakes like that, firstly, you can't play, and secondly, that's you costing the rest of their teams, sometimes it's salary, some people have to move. So it's a huge implication every time you step on that field. And I think becoming older and just understanding all the responsibilities that come with the game was the thing that changed everything for me.
You obviously bounced back pretty well from the Raymond Rhule test, because you went on to then win with La Rochelle not just once but 2 years in a row. What do you think was sort of the main difference in Raymond Rhule from 2017 and then Raymond Rhule in 2022 when you won the first European Champions Cup?
I think the huge thing is just growth, man. I think we make a lot of mistakes here and there. It doesn't always go our way, but the ability to bounce back, I think that's important. Yes, to a certain degree, I do feel like I never really got my opportunity again, but that is a part of life in terms of the Springboks. But I've learned to be okay with that. And I've also understood that it is a business, and in any company that things don't go well, heads must roll. And unfortunately, it was mine that had to roll. It's not nice, but you understand, or I've come to understand that. But yeah, I bring it all down to growth. I was much younger then, much more free and much more liberal about the way I go about everything. Coming into France, my game was able to mature, and I was able to mature as well. So yeah, that's the biggest difference, just growth.
And do you think you're maybe used as a sort of scapegoat from the Raymond Rhule test or against the All Blacks?
Yeah, look, I can sit here and say that, yes, to a certain degree, but ultimately I've got to take accountability for my own mistakes and my approach to that game. Yes, there's a lot that could have gone right, but there's a lot that did go wrong. And unfortunately, that's the one thing about rugby. If a lot of stuff's going wrong that's around you, then you become the catalyst, you know. Looking back, I could have done a whole lot of other things differently, which if it was now, I would know how to handle it. But South Africa is a different landscape. And I think if I refer back to the earlier conversation where we spoke about the South Africans just being highly passionate about their sport, you understand that it might come out as hate to a certain degree, but it comes from a point of passion, and it might not necessarily be aimed towards me, but I might just be the guy that's wearing that jersey at that stage. So you tend to understand how it is.
Yeah, I mean, hindsight's always a great lesson to learn as well. Have you spoken with has there ever been any talks in the last few years with Rassie at all? Are you on his radar? Have you chatted?
No. I think the message was clear before I left. One of the reasons why I left South Africa was Rassie had just come in, and he was just trying to basically get his bearings of his stock. So they had a camp of about 100 players in South Africa, and I wasn't part of it. So at that stage, you understand that you are nowhere in his books, not in the future. So that was the point for me. Was like, you know what, it's time. But since then, sometimes coaches just don't like you, man. It's nothing personal,
Yeah.
but maybe something about your game doesn't fit what it is that he's looking for. So no chat thus far. But he doesn't owe me anything. So I'm settled with that.
Yeah, I was speaking with Chris Robshaw yesterday, who was telling me when Eddie came in and he dropped a bunch of the players from the 2019 squad that had been in the senior sort of development team for around the last sort of 7 years. And he said sometimes coaches just don't have, they've got their jigsaw puzzle and there's a piece in the jigsaw and maybe you fit, maybe you don't fit. But for some coaches, it just is what it is.
It is what it is. It's not personal. You learn that with age.
So winning 2 European rugby trophies consecutively is quite an incredible feat. Can you take us back to the moments just before those final matches and share the atmosphere within the team? Any pre-game rituals or unique preparations that you believe played a key role in back-to-back victories?
Not necessarily. I think we take it very take the games very seriously. And the nice thing is that we've managed to acquire a lot of experience in that aspect, having played in the first year back to, well, two finals, obviously not winning, but we knew it was a taste we wanted to have again. And the whole season we were working towards that. And the one thing I did learn while I was at the Cheetahs with under coach Franco Smith, he would always say that you don't prepare for a final in the week of a final. You prepare in all the weeks leading up to it, and then the final basically plays itself. So I think that's honestly one of the approaches that I think Ronan also takes is we already know what our objective and our goal is, and then we just map out a way to get there. You know.
What is Ronan's sort of pre-match talks like? I've seen a few of them. He's got a very strong Cork accent in French when he's going through. But
No,
what's it like for you?
no, it's interesting. I mean, Ronan's a very chilled guy, and he's a people's person. But then he knows when to turn on be our manager or our coach. And it depends on who's receiving, because some guys can be really serious and some guys will take the piss or whatever the case might be. But he knows how to get his message across, and especially when it counts. So, and I think that's one of the indicators of a good manager or coach.
And what was that pre-game talk like in the final this year round?
To be honest with you, if I remember correctly, the message was simply this: what type of story do you want to write, or what type of history do you want to create? Yes, we were victorious in France and in Marseille in our own backyard, but if you really want to become a legend, then you have to go into the lion's den and beat the lion. You know, that was the culmination of that week. And I think the nice part is both years didn't give us a chance. And I mean, what more motivation could you want? If you've got nothing to do, you just might as well throw the kitchen sink at them and see if they can handle it. That's it.
And you guys ran away with a victory. You ran away with a try, and you also ran away with the corner post, right?
Yes. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Look, it was great, and I think because I watch a lot of all these Viking movies and all that, and it's all based in all these wars and strategy and winning. And the one thing they say is, look, when you go into battle and you conquer, bring yourself a souvenir, and that was mine. That was
the corner post now. Where is she?
It was in my garden, but now it's in my room. It's in my
I like it. I like it. So obviously I can imagine there was quite a lot of celebrations. Could you give us sort of a glimpse into the aftermath of those triumphs? How did the celebration unfold, and were there any spontaneous or memorable experiences you can share from the moments when you sealed the victory?
No, I mean, the first time is always the most special. I think that was just, I can't explain the feeling. And I think it was just overwhelming. But we went all out. And I think that's what we learned on the second time, because when we went all out after celebrating, we still had the top 14 to go fight for. And we fell short on that aspect. But last year we had a bit more of experience, and we had placed ourselves in a position where we can handle it a whole lot better. So definitely there was fun that was had, especially the guys that were winning it for the first time. But at the back of our minds, we all knew that, look, we've got a final to get ourselves to, and possibly win a double. Unfortunately, we fell short. So that's just part of rugby.
There's always next year.
Yes.
There's always opportunities. I think that's been a key running theme here, is hopefully there's more opportunities to come. I think there was some pretty cool badass photos of you and Rog smoking the cigars on the tour bus. How was that?
No, that was cool. That was cool, and I think that's one of the things that you appreciate about just having a good coach is that look, when it's time to play, it's time to play, but when it's time to work, it's time to work, and when the guys are playing, then they, as long as they do it responsibly, he's all for that.
And who are some of the big leaders in off the field and in training and things like this in the squad?
Off the field, as in like with socials, or what?
More so with, yeah, I mean, sort of big names in the squad, sort of that kind of respected or sort of leaders within the team that
Yeah,
people.
we've got a bunch of guys. I think the previous or before when I initially got here, there was Victor Vida was here. He was huge for us, but he retired. Then we've got leaders that don't have to say anything. They do their leading on the field. Guys like, obviously he's not here anymore, Vian. He was here, but when you look at the group the way it is now, just in terms of setting a good vibe and getting everyone in a good mood, we've got a guy like Will Skelton. He's always a fun guy to be around. Winnie Antonio as well. But those guys know how to basically crack a joke all the way till we get on the field, and you think they're going to switch on and be serious, and they're still cracking a joke on the field, but you can't say anything because these guys are playing unbelievable rugby. That's just their personalities. So it gives us a bit of calm and silliness with our games. And you got a guy like Tawera who's always serious. You know, he can crack a joke here and there, but he's the guy that always sort of keeps us from not straying too far from our objectives. So yeah, no, we've got across the board. Then that's just more in the foreign boys group, and then just leaders across the board. You've got guys like Bogaritz, you've got Aldred, so Lips. There's a lot of guys across the board. And I think we are lucky in that aspect.
Yeah, I remember seeing this hilarious video of Antonio talking to Matt Con, asking about his passport situation.
Yeah, now I was supposed to do that in the French final, but I had buckled under pressure. My French fell away. And that was my second chance. Hopefully a third time lucky.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I mean, it's always nice having a guy like Will Skelton on your team. I wouldn't want to be having to tackle him if I was.
I reckon, man, it's near impossible, man. The guy is just he's a gentle giant. I think that's the best word to use. He's a gentle giant. He can be aggressive. He can turn it on when you need to turn it on. But outside of that, he's a cool guy, wants to help everyone, basically bakes cookies for us, you know. So that's Will. So he'll bump you off and then give you a cookie afterwards. So that's Will.
So I watched the Barbarians series, and I know you were lucky to be part of the Barbarians during that period. What was it? What was your experience like with the Barbarians, and how did you find that?
That was awesome, man. Yo, I think especially a lot of the French boys that are also part of it. Some of them you get to know a little bit more because most of the time you're just facing them and playing against them, and you never really get time to chill and just have a beer together. And the boys from outside as well, because a guy like George Bridge was just coming in. So it's just an opportunity to get to know guys that you would not normally not associate with, but not normally have the time to associate with. I mean, if I look back, I think that's one of my regrets of playing Super Rugby was when the New Zealand and the Aussie boys come, we never really mixed as much, you know. And then now coming here and getting to know a guy like Will, getting to know a guy like T, and just thinking, oh man, if we actually took the time and got to know each other, we'd have so many more stories when they'd come to our backyards or when we go to theirs. So I think that's one of my regrets. And playing with the Barbarians, I was able to do that. And obviously now playing in France, it's come a long way.
Scott Robinson, quite a renowned coach that led the Barbarians during that time.
Yeah.
Can you shed any sort of light on his specific coaching style or anything he might have said to you, fostering sort of unity and performance on the field?
I think when I look at Razor, he doesn't say much, but when he says something, everyone listens, and he has a respect or aura around him that it's just there, and I think he doesn't put too much pressure on you. He allows you to be yourself, but all he'll say is, "Look, you've got a responsibility. Whatever you do up until that point or after, that's up to you. But you've got a responsibility now towards me, towards the team, towards your families, and just go out there and be the person that we picked." And there was from a mental point of view, that's what I got. But just from a coaching point of view, he's very simple. He tells you, "This is what I want. Be here, be there. Everything else, just play." That's all you need to hear. That's pretty clear, man.
And then was there any, obviously there's a lot of personalities, and Barbarians is famous for bringing a lot of people together. Were there any sort of unexpected friendships or connections that you formed during your time with the Barboks?
You form a connection with everyone. I think that's a nice thing about it. We all go out together, we all enjoy together. Obviously, it was nice that I had quite a lot of guys that I've played with and I know from being here. But it was really nice to get to know the new guys. An unexpected personality, I will say, is Joe Marler. He's a crack, and he's his own guy, but you just learn to enjoy being around him and listening to all the things he says. But yeah, no, I think Joe Marler was for me the surprise of the Barbarians.
Was there anything that stood out to you that you might have said?
No, nothing. I just think he's always on point with all he's saying, and the accent also gets you or catches you off guard. But just generally, he's a funny bloke and highly respected. But you just see him as being this serious guy with this serious face on TV or playing again next to him. But then when you put all that away and we just cracking jokes, I mean, he's one of the coolest guys you'd meet.
Fair enough. I think, yeah, he seems like quite a big personality when you see him on sort of different shows and everything. And
yeah,
I imagine he's quite a banterous boy.
Yeah, no, he's got a lot of banter, that one.
So moving on to sort of the World Cup and everything like that, and obviously South Africa just played in the Rugby Championship. What's your opinion on the current state of rugby with South Africa?
I think they're in an in-between spot. I think they've got the pressures of being the defending champs, but also now they do understand that they obviously are playing in a different atmosphere. But they've added a couple of guys into their squad or group since the last time they've won, that bring other aspects or bring different qualities. I think now what they need to go figure out is how to basically replicate that same environment and winning culture like they did in 2019. So there's a lot of pressure on them. Obviously, yes, from back home, but I think on themselves individually, they all pride themselves in being world-class players. So they're in a good place. Yeah, ultimately in a good place.
Do you think they'll struggle without Andre Pollard in the initial stages?
I think Paulie brings a lot of calm to the team in that aspect. Mani not coming in is a bit more flashy, but from what I understand about him, he can also somewhat replicate that. But I think it's small things that one misses from certain personalities. But that's the beauty of sport, man. If one guy can't do it, someone else has to stand up, and you might even get more than what you were losing with the previous guy. So you never know. Mani has the time now or opportunity to go prove himself. I would say everyone should just stand behind him and let him basically grow into the shoes he has to fill, and we might be lucky and he outgrows those shoes.
Yeah, I think Mani Lubak's has come in and he's offering more the kicking, reassurance kicking off the tee that maybe Willemse didn't quite offer at number 10 because Willemse was more quite flashy. And I'd be very interested to see Willemse at 15 with Marnie Lubak at number 10 there. But obviously he's come in quite late and he's not had a lot of time to gel into the Springbok squad. But like you said, people can surprise you and anything can happen. As we were talking earlier, opportunities come and they go, and hopefully it turns out all right for Mali there. In terms of favourites and predictions for the World Cup, who do you think's the favourites to win?
Obviously, you tend to have to go with France being in their backyard, sorry. But I mean, the Springboks can always surprise any team on any day. The All Blacks as well. I mean, Ireland's playing really great rugby. So I think for me, those 4 teams, I mean, can beat any team on any day. Yes, there's always other teams that can surprise you, Scotland, your Wales, or whatever the case might be, Argentina. There's many fringe teams, but I think those 4 teams, depending on who can adapt the most or the best, we'll see. But you tend to have to go with the favorites to a certain degree. And I think the French squad and team is in a very good wicket. Whichever team that's going to beat the French in France has to be on their A game on that day. And which Ireland can be, South Africa can be, the All Blacks can be. I mean, it's a nice World Cup to go into, because before most World Cups, you have a clear-cut favorite. And I think right now there's a bit of everything, and it makes for good TV.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's going to be the closest World Cup we've ever had, given that previous World Cups, it was all quite dominated by the All Blacks and the Boks. Yeah. And I'm very excited. Obviously, going back to the final again, there's obviously been a lot of sort of controversy around bans and World Rugby with the Owen Farrell tackle and the Johnny Sexton ban, which you were in that match, I believe, in the final. Did that happen when Johnny got banned for complaining to the ref, or was that in the final with the other?
If I'm not mistaken, I think what happened there was they were trying to avoid Ronan from chatting to the coach or something, or a ref or something like that. Apparently, it was something that happened previously, the previous year, and they were trying to avoid that. So I'm not too versed in that whole incident, to be honest with you. But I mean, we are all human beings. Sometimes, most times, we're able to control our emotions, but sometimes we aren't. But I don't think Johnny is not a good bloke at all. I think he's a good bloke. Sometimes your emotions get the best of you. But I think he's done a lot for the rugby sphere and the rugby world, and he's still going to be respected either way.
What do you think rugby needs to do to grow as a sport?
Honestly, I think they need to sell more of a story at the moment now, and I think I'm liking this aspect where I saw the international sides have their names on their jerseys. I think that's important for the growth of rugby, to not just associate a player with a team, but to associate a player with his story and sort of follow the player's story instead of just following a team. And I think soccer and all these other sports are able to do that. If you look at the way Ronaldo commands a following, or Messi commands a following, where yes, these guys might be hardcore Barca fans, but they've now also started following Inter Miami and all these places. And I think that's where rugby is a bit behind, in being able to sell individualized stories and sell the personalities that you have in the sport, whereas right now it's just a blanket sport.
And do you think perhaps we were talking about before the podcast, the 1 versus 1 rugby? Do you think that would be a way that could be done?
Look, with 1 versus 1 rugby, ultimately it's yes to tell a story, but it gives an excitement factor where you see matchups. When you think about a rugby game, you don't necessarily you don't get an opportunity to get a one-on-one matchup. So we always have this thing of if you look at basketball, when they speak, they speak about primetime MJ and LeBron James and those type of things. So you get your one-on-one matchups. In rugby, there's so many variables and combinations that even if the analysts would be like, Lucanio Am is going against Ringrose, you're never really going to get that opportunity, because they're always somewhere else on the field. Yes, here and there you see it. But when you look at one versus one, there's no place to hide. When you're talking about a matchup, you're talking about you've got to stand your ground and your opponent also has to stand his ground. And depending on who gives in, it makes for an interesting or makes for entertaining TV. Let me say that.
It's like the UFC of rugby, essentially.
Essentially.
So I think that's the end of the normal part of the podcast.
Yeah.
We're now going to move on to the quick fire fan questions just to wrap things up. So I'm going to hit you off with the first one, which is, who is the toughest player you've ever faced?
Toughest player I've ever faced, I would say John Daisel. He used to play for the Sharks back in the day. Tough as nails. I think that's the hardest tackle I've ever felt. So definitely John Daisel. And I might put a close second be Liam Squire, because he retired my international career.
Fair enough. Brutal. And what are your thoughts on English rugby?
English rugby, I think they face a huge they're in a difficult spot, because obviously England, if I'm not mistaken, the rugby's played in private schools or something like that. I'm not sure how it works down there, but most of the other nations have a bigger pool of boys to choose from. And sometimes with the England rugby, because soccer is a big thing, it becomes a bit harder for them to basically churn out talent like that. But I think they should just be true to who they are. I think they're struggling with the identity at the moment, and chopping and changing coaches might not necessarily be the how do I say it, the answer. But if
it worked for the Springboks in 2018.
See, so look, need I say more?
But I will surprise you there, Raymond, because actually England has the largest group of player pool selection in the world.
Really?
Yeah.
Bigger than South Africa?
I think so, yeah. And that's why there's a lot of everyone's saying England's got such a large selection of players. Why aren't they world number one and all the resources and everything? That's why there's so much back and forth between the media.
And I'm highly misinformed. I'll check that out.
Yeah. So what does schoolboy rugby in South Africa mean to you?
Schoolboy rugby in South Africa, honestly speaking, is a fraternity. I think it's the closest thing you'll get to the way they're able to do in American football, where people are just crazy about it. I think to a certain degree, if there was a bigger marketing machine behind it, schoolboy rugby would challenge some of the professional teams. It's crazy. You can get to a place where there's 30,000 people coming out for a weekend of schoolboy rugby, and that's numbers that you're getting here in Europe, where like in our stadium is about 18,000, and we getting a sold out stadium every weekend. That's a huge achievement. But for derbies back in South Africa, you'd easily get a 20,000 people out there. So schoolboy rugby for me, especially in South Africa, is a huge brand, somewhat untapped, but I think they enjoy the fact that it's not, it just comes down to the rugby and supporting your team. It's not a business.
What was the hardest thing about moving from South Africa to France?
The food. The food. The food, because I'm generally a picky eater, so in South Africa, I always knew all my spots. I always knew what I wanted or what I could get. In France, adjusting to the times, adjusting to the palettes that they have here, and just the way they go about everything. It kept me hungry for a bit, but I managed to survive.
What's your favorite French expression?
C'est comme ça.
C'est comme ça. Ça roule ma poule.
Ça roule ma poule, oui.
Who do you think is the greatest coach of all time?
Ooh. Oh, that depends, eh? What's the metric? True. I plead the fifth on that one. I wouldn't know what to say. I think depending on, look, a lot of coaches have got a lot of accolades across the board. I'd tend to just favor coaches that picked me. So
Your favorite coach of all time that you've had?
I'm at the moment, Ronan's picking me, so I'll go Ronan. I can't go wrong there.
Who do you think will be the standout player at the Rugby World Cup?
Ooh. Just purely on individual brilliance. I mean, Chesden's always a good bet. I think he's a walking highlight reel. If you're talking about just established players, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if a youngster, a guy that no one really knows, comes in and surprise a lot of people, especially the new guy that's playing for the French squad, Belbaré. He's quite good. So he might come in and surprise a couple of people. But yeah, I would say Cheslin for now.
What's your favorite cut of cigar?
Ooh, I wouldn't know. I just smoke it. I wouldn't know. I just smoke it. Yeah, no, I don't have a favorite. I just.
I think that one came in because the photo I put up earlier for the fan questions.
Yeah.
And I think it's become quite iconic with your branding, let's say.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right. So I should become a bit more versed in the cigar game then.
What's one part of the world that you've not been to but you'd like to travel to?
I think Seychelles, Maldives, those type of places. I've never really been to anywhere like, well, I come from a tropical sort of environment, but I've really always wanted to go to see these clear waters, blue. I mean, see if Instagram is not lying to me.
The next fan question is, what's your story from moving from Ghana over to South Africa?
Pretty simple. My dad originally moved to South Africa, and he basically came and set up everything. And I think about 2 or 3 years later, if not a bit more, then my mom and I came over and joined him. Just looking for economic opportunities. That's it.
And then, so this question's going to be a question from me. So I'm moving to China after the World Cup to go and play rugby and film a documentary out there to try and grow rugby in China. So what would your piece of advice be to me going out there and then playing rugby with all the Chinese teams?
I think you've got to be able to adapt. I think that's where a lot of people tend to go wrong or tend to fall short is they want things to tend to fall the way they see it. And when you're in a new environment and around new people, the quicker you can adapt, the quicker things work out for you. And you never know what opportunities you can get from that. But yeah, essentially that. I think adaptability is a superpower. And if you're able to do that, it goes a long way, especially for the locals.
Yeah, 100%. Having that cultural awareness and being able to adapt to all situations and finding the opportunities. And then the final question that I always ask is, if you had one piece of advice for our younger audience and people that are growing up and looking up to players like yourself, what would it be?
I would say enjoy it while you still can, because the dream of most young boys is to become a professional. But when you're a professional, the responsibility that comes with it is you might not necessarily be playing the way you want to, or playing in the conditions you want to, or playing under the coaches you want to. So then it becomes more of a responsibility than just pure enjoyment. So while you're still young, enjoy it, because what is a coach going to say to you after you get, someone puts you on your ass, or someone runs around you, you go sit and your friends laugh about it. No one's going to write about it in the newspaper or whatever. So you're able to enjoy the game and play it the way it's meant to be played. The older you get, it becomes a business, and businesses have targets. And it's either you are, as you said, part of the jigsaw puzzle, or you're not. So ultimately, the word just enjoy. Enjoy.
And if there was one person that you'd like to see on the Champagne Rugby podcast, who would it be and why?
To hear his story, I'd say Cornel Hendricks. And why I say that is I've played with him, and firstly, he's a great oak. Secondly, he's very intelligent in that aspect, and he's very passionate about the game of rugby, and he's willing to put the work in. But for about 4 years, he wasn't allowed to play. Now, I've been out for about a month and a half, my first major injury, whatever the case might be, and I'm not even sure what to do with myself, But he's been out he was out for 4 years, and finding that motivation to keep going and looking for opportunity after opportunity whilst many doors were closed. I think that's a fascinating story. And I think it'll be an interesting watch just to hear how he was able to continue keeping the faith and basically keeping in shape as well up until he got that yes, we'll take you on. That's me.
I'm inspired. I'm gonna reach out to him once this podcast is done and see if we can get him on. 100%.
Yeah, I think he's got a very good story.
Thank you very much, Raymond, for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast, and I'm sure the listeners have also learned a lot and been inspired in some way by your story. For those listeners that are interested to follow your story, where can they find you on social media?
Just generally on Instagram, Rhule or Raymond Rhule, or Rhule 11, I think, somewhere like that. Just Raymond Rhule on Instagram. You can follow me there. I mean, I don't post a lot, but when I do post, it's something exciting that's happening. So, but yeah, that's where you can follow me. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Champagne.